Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very, very good evening. My name is Raj Amir. This is a Recusant Nine transmission. Last one of the year. 2024 comes to an end, and we are still here. We are still fighting. We are still exposing, and the information I released this morning is absolutely staggering. It's breathtaking, and it puts into context what is really going on in this town and what really happened at the council meeting on Wednesday. That was abandoned. The more I find out, the more that is revealed to me, the more it is clear to me that it was instigated. It was instigated to be abandoned, and you can see, those of you who remember the transmission and will go through it, you can see how Arud Shah repeatedly wanted the meeting cancelled. I have a dossier of information that was leaked to me, and that dossier of information, whistleblower leaked it to me. I have it in my hands. It is a file of restricted Oldham Council documents. I've seen someone post something on one of my posts on Facebook saying these documents are available in the online. What I have in my hands is not available online. So we're clear. And what it reveals is something that should concern every one of you. It reveals the need for an investigation by the National Crime Agency. That's clear. So no ambiguity here. The National Crime Agency, the NCA, the fraud squad, as it was known as, need to now come in and investigate Oldham Metropolitan Borough Council. And what I find absolutely staggering, is that opposition councillors have all seen the documents. They're not all, they should have, and they have access to it. They've all been in that meeting, or should have gone to that meeting last week. On Monday night, I think it was, or Tuesday night, one before the full council meeting. It was when the Liberal Democrats called in the decision around Prince's Gate, and the documents that were released and an analysis of those documents released leave me in no doubt whatsoever. And the paperwork itself can leave no doubt whatsoever. Now, I was not at that meeting. That meeting was held behind closed doors. You and I were excluded from it. But the likes of Maggie Hurley should have been there. The likes of Marc Hince would have been there. The likes of Mark Wilkinson and Brian Hoban and so on and so on. All of the independent councillors that we supported and elected at various points, and we elected them on a number of key issues, of which one was to fight against the corruption and criminality that infests Oldham Council. Now, I find it breathtaking, I genuinely do, I find it breathtaking that these councillors have not issued a statement, and that these councillors have not called for the National Crime Agency to now come in and investigate Oldham. I will, of course, release all of the documents that have come to me with a thorough and in-depth analysis, so that you can, one, read for yourself what the document says and come to your own conclusions, but you will also be able to read my analysis of what it says. And based on that, it is of no surprise to me whatsoever no surprise to me whatsoever, that both Paul Clifford, the Director of Growth, his departure was announced hours after that meeting, and Sarah Johnston, the Section 151 officer, the woman, the senior council officer in charge of our finances, has also left, and the announcement of her departure also came hours after that council meeting. So, why are the opposition councillors silent? Is £12,000 that much money? Or are you cowards? When I exposed the cover-up of the now confirmed grooming and gang rape of children across our borough, many of you had the defence of either you were in council and you didn't know, and that information was kept from you, which is the defence Howard Sykes used when he stood up in the council chamber that day when the assurance review confirmed everything we said had been true. Or you were on the outside, unable to make a difference, and you made promises. You made promises not just to me, but to everyone who voted for you, that you would stand up for what is right. There are a number of you that were in that meeting. In that meeting this week. I know the likes of Sam Al-Hamdani spoke passionately in that meeting. Well, it's easy, lads, speaking passionately in a behind closed doors meeting. But you owe it to the electorate. Helen Bishop, you're elected on this mandate. Mr. Kenyon, you're elected on this mandate. Beth Sharp, Dave Arnott, Lewis has done more than enough. Every one of you were elected on this mandate of helping clean up our town. Where are your statements? Simply stating that based on the outcome of the calling in meeting, you have no alternative other than to request that the National Crime Agency is called into Oldham. Because what you all spoke passionately about and the faults you identified can lead you to no other conclusion other than the same conclusion that I reach. I've got the papers, lads. I've got the papers. And now I understand why that Arud Shah, Marc Hince and their administration needed the meeting to collapse in case this was brought up. And separate to this serious matter, of, and I'll bring something up and I'll read it to you. The timeline reveals a disturbing pattern of obstruction. From the initial procurement process in July 2023 through to the Cabinet decision in November 24, we see consistent attempts to avoid scrutiny bypass normal governance procedures, and conceal information from elected members and the public. The subsequent cancellation of the full council meeting represents a culmination of these efforts to prevent proper democratic oversight. What began as a procedural challenge through the calling process has uncovered evidence of what appears to be systematic misconduct and potential criminal behaviour. The patterns identified in this investigation suggest more than simple mismanagement or procedural failures. They point to a coordinated effort to commit public funds while deliberately evading scrutiny and oversight. And these are my words, I'm reading them to you. The findings detailed in subsequent chapters, and I will release this, don't worry, I will release this, demonstrate how a major public project intended to regenerate Oldham's town centre instead became a case study in the breakdown of public sector governance and potential criminal misconduct in public office. The systematic nature of these issues, combined with the scale of public funds at risk and the apparent attempt at high-level concealment, demands immediate investigation by the National Crime Agency. This report presents the evidence of these failures, the attempts to conceal them, and the urgent need for criminal investigation to protect public funds and restore trust in local government institutions. And the scale of the financial exposure, and I'll give you these figures, the confidential document reveals a total viability gap of £156.2 million. This is not an estimate or projection, it is clearly documented in the papers that have been leaked to me. And the breakdown across development sites shows that the former Civic Centre complex, there's a gap of £62 million. The Leisure Centre, the Old Sports Centre, there's a gap of £36 million. The Magistrates Court, there's a gap of £16 million. And when it comes to Princes Gate, there's a gap of £42.2 million. I've taken these figures directly from section 6.8 of the report that has been leaked to me. Game changer, okay. Worse than that, there are revenue implications. In 24-25, this financial year, £4.868 million. That's just this year. And the call-in explicitly states that this decision falls outside the council's agreed budget. This is a critical point. A multi-million pound commitment was made without proper budget allocation. Based on that, the timing of the council's chief finance officer (section 151 officer's) departure, announced shortly after the meeting, raises serious concerns, as the statutory officer responsible for ensuring proper administration of the council's financial affairs under the Local Government Act 1972, that person's role would have been crucial in this decision. Given the scale of financial exposure and the clear statement that this falls outside the council's agreed budget, several questions demand answers. The documents leaked to me explicitly identify several unmitigated risks. The council is likely to be required to make revenue provision for eligible costs as they are incurred by Muse. That means, we are going to have to pay Muse revenue costs. No council resources are currently allocated to meet the above viable gaps. That's 150 something million, remember. No council resources are currently allocated. The report acknowledges in section 6.7 that the value of costs that are to be potentially reimbursed by the council is £5 million, £5 million, with terms yet to be negotiated. Section 6.14 admits the financial consequences of any challenge are not possible to quantify at this stage. Let me read that back to you. The financial consequences of any challenge are not possible to quantify at this stage. The documents provide clear evidence of financial commitments made without proper budget provision. The call-in form states this falls outside the council's agreed budget, and it does. Section 6.1 of their own report confirms costs of £24,000 not currently budgeted for. Small, insignificant you might think, but it all adds up. Section 6.11 explicitly states no council resources are currently allocated. The evidence presented by the council's own document shows a £156.2 million viability gap, £5 million in underwriting commitments, nearly £5 million of revenue implications, no allocated budget, no identified funding source, no risk management strategy. Let me say that again, no risk management strategy. The departure of the Section 151 officer almost immediately following these decisions demands investigation by appropriate authorities. The combination of unbudgeted commitments, lack of financial controls, and the loss of the statutory financial officer suggests either catastrophic governance failures or deliberate misconduct. More. There are procurement law breaches. It reads that way. Whether there are not is really for the National Crime Agency to come in. The investigation, my investigation, has examined the procurement implications detailed in the Council's legal documentation, specifically sections 4 and 7 of the report, which analyse compliance with the Public Contracts Regulation 2015, brackets known as PCR 2015. The report, as in the Council's report, explicitly states in section 4.1, a variation of the MDA to include the proposal renders its new contract requiring a new procurement process unless the variation can be demonstrated to fall within one of the permitted variations set out in Regulation 72 of the Public Contracts Regulation 2015. The scale of modification, of course, is what determines the significance. The original contract value stated as £350 million to £550 million. They don't even know how much the contract value might have been originally. Oh, it's anything between £350 million to £550 million. It's okay when it's not your money. What's £200 million when it's not your money? Prince's Gate would increase the gross development value by £51 million, plus the £5 million in pre-development costs. So for the total modification value would be £56 million. That is massive, yet the council, as identified in the documents that emerged through the calling, attempts to rely on two specific exemptions. The exemptions don't wash. Their own legal advice warns specifically about what they are trying to do. If the council intends to proceed with both modifications in one variation of the MDA, then a court may consider these as one modification in the round, especially given that the two elements of the proposal are being negotiated together at the same time as part of the variation. The potential consequence of what Arooj Shah and her pals have tried to do, which is why I think the finance officer has run away, the Section 151 officer has run away, and the Director of Growth has also run away. Section 4.4 of their own report outlines two potential remedies available to challengers. A claim for damages, arguing that the variation is a breach by the council, and a claim for a declaration of ineffectiveness against the variation. The head of Commercial Procurement Unit states in Section 8.1 of the report, given the value, profile, market supply chain associated with this project, I would expect a challenge may be likely. The documented evidence raises serious concerns about the council's handling of procurement law. Several critical issues emerge. Deliberate risk-taking. Is that new to any of you? Deliberate risk-taking. The council appears to have knowingly proceeded with a high-risk procurement strategy despite explicit warnings. This is evidenced by legal advice identifying need for new procurement, head of Commercial Procurement Unit's warning, and the decision to proceed despite these warnings. 2. A manipulation of contract values. The attempt to separate the modifications raises serious questions. Remember this, oh, that bit's over there, but we're going to advertise it and we're going to hand it over together. Then it doesn't make it separate, it's one in the round, which is what their own legal people have said. The attempt to separate the modifications raises serious questions. The legal advice explicitly warns about a court viewing them as one modification in the round. The timing and structure suggest a possible attempt to artificially divide the contract to fit within exemptions, a practice specifically prohibited under procurement law. The third reason about the council's handling, the urgency without justification. The timeline reveals concerning urgency. Legal advice received on October the 24th, 2024. The decision was rushed through on November the 18th. No documented justification exists for this urgency, particularly given the significant procurement risks identified and a small matter of over £500 million. Strategic concealment. The combination of private cabinet meetings, rushed timelines, attempts to split modifications, lack of public notice all suggest a potential strategy to minimise scrutiny and challenge opportunities. And of course, nothing new for any of us, the disregard for public interest. The head of Commercial Procurement Unit's warning about likely challenges was essentially a prediction that public money would be put at risk. The decision to proceed regardless represents a concerning disregard for public financial interests. What I'm sharing with you is a pattern that suggests more than just poor judgment. It indicates potential, deliberate circumvention of procurement law with full knowledge of the risks and consequences. Carries on and carries on and carries on. And that is why, this is why, I believe the meeting was sabotaged and cancelled. Because days earlier, they had been forced to reveal a series of documents that raised red flag after red flag after red flag. And I remain flabbergasted We have campaigned and supported opposition councillors from across all parties to get elected. They were in that meeting, they've seen these documents, and not one has the courage to say anything. And what am I asking for? Am I shouting and screaming at anyone? No. All I'm asking these opposition councillors to do is find a spine. They were at the meeting. If they were at the meeting, they have this paperwork. And if they can't read and analyse it, then all they have to do is drop me an email and I'll send them my analysis. What they need to do, what they now must do. What they now must do. Is call for the National Crime Agency. Issue statements. Otherwise, this is all a waste of time. They can get away with it on the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children because they can say they didn't know or they were misled and they were horrified when they found out. But on this matter, they did know. They have the paperwork, and it was a council whistleblower that came to me. Raja, I know it's Christmas. Will you please have a look at this? And I have. And I know why they brought it to me. So come on. The Liberal Democrats, official opposition, you called this in. Where's your statement as a consequence of calling it in the meeting that took place? Or is it like with Howard Sykes when he suddenly decided he was going to get in bed with Arooj Shah and back the appointment of Harry Caffrell 1 day a week and Shelley Kipling 4 days a week, even though it hadn't been externally advertised? Are we back there? When it comes to it, you're just two sides of the same butt cheeks. Two sides of the same backside. The Conservatives. Yes, I'm not asking for Lewis to say anything. He's done more than enough. Where are the others? Where are all of you who wanted to be leader or deputy leader? Sheldon, you are the leader of the Conservative Party in Oldham. You were at this meeting, weren't you, Graham? I know the Pakistani sectarians are at this meeting. They've not said anything. Maybe because some of if the National Crime Agency came in, it wouldn't just stop investigating this issue and might end up investigating a whole host of other issues. Maybe that's why they're silent, I don't know. But the independents? Well, I think we know why Marc Hince and Brian Hoban are silent. You've got this document, Mark Wilkinson. You've got this document, Maggie Hurley. So that is what I believe took place. The meeting was sabotaged just in case any of this emerged. Which is why, after the meeting was sabotaged, is when I was contacted by a whistleblower. And I met with them, and I've got the documents. And I will release them with my own analysis, but I will also release the documents as an appendix, and you can make sense of it yourself, and then perhaps ask, when they come and knock on your door for a vote, ask them why they are silent to what is taking place when it matters. It's easy to argue over the dustbins not being collected, or some litter on a street, or some potholes or a speed hump. All of that is easy. £500 million and rising. A very good evening to the 241 of you who have decided to watch me this evening for the last transmission of the year. I've put it out free to air because I think there's a lot to get through, and hopefully you can see the difference I make and what I bring, and without me where we would all be on this journey, because I believe you would be nowhere. Now some of you say, well, what's the point, Raj? You've said this, you've said that, you've been saying it forever. Well, yes, I have been saying it forever, and our victories are few and far between. But if we stop fighting, if I stop fighting, where does that leave any of us? If you find value, and it is just before Christmas, if you find value, there's a link right at the top. I'll put it back up on the screen. And I know I've not got 247 of you are not paid supporters. Please at the very least, like the broadcast. And if you can, buy me a samosa, buy me a mince pie. So far, 3 of you have bought me a samosa. And I know Tony has kindly bought me a super chat on here, so thank you very much, Tony, and thank you to the 3 people who know where we would be without me. Okay. Another reason of why the meeting was abandoned was because of what I'd revealed in the morning. And I know there's a lot going on and we miss, or there's too much to consume sometimes and things get lost. But the simple fact is, Oldham Council approved planning permission for a children's home at an address in a house of a convicted child sex offender. There's no ifs, there's no buts, and it's as ridiculous as it sounds. Oldham Council approved planning permission for a children's home in a property until very recently was occupied by a convicted child sex offender. And to make matters worse, the decision around the planning permission was called in to a special public sort of meeting, chaired by Cllr Marc Hince, Shaw councillor himself. Howard Sykes also spoke at that event in support of the residents who objected to it, as did Councillor Lisa Navesey, who has a senior role in safeguarding. And not one of them made reference to the unsuitability of this house, this property, because it had been the home of a convicted child sex offender. Why? Are we still covering up for child sex offenders? Because I know, just as an ordinary citizen, I would find it, at the very least, distasteful that children needing care, and remember this children's home is for younger children, as confirmed in the meeting, children as young as 7 needing support are being housed in a property that the immediate community knows belonged to a convicted child sex offender. And again, there's nothing in the Oldham Times, there's nothing in the Manchester Evening News, and there's nothing about this. But the facts are out there. I shared the facts in the transmission earlier on this week. It is his ward, isn't it? I think they are just getting more and more brazen. Than incompetent. I think they're getting more and more brazen. More and more brazen. Now, the council meeting ended, as you all know. The council meeting ended as a consequence of something to do with a altercation between Councillor Marc Hince and supposedly Councillor Lewis Quigg and Max Woodvine. No, that's a deflection. There was more than that. There was an altercation right from the outset between Councillor Lewis Quigg and Councillor and the borough solicitor, the interim borough solicitor, Alexander Bogatov. I'm going to play this for you because I want you to watch it with me. I want you to watch it with me, so there's no ambiguity of Raja said this, someone else said that. Just give me 1 second, let me find it.
I'm going to say something very similar, and I'm going to try and take a brief. I had a very long speech prepared, but obviously I don't think everybody wants to hear it. But
Hold on.
Opportunities.
well,
yes,
absolutely, no problem.
business at meetings are not acceptable. Members of the public are asked, therefore, to note the public meeting protocol, which is also available on the council's website, and elected members are reminded to note the elected members protocol and the members code of conduct, which provides details of expected principle of behavior. Item 1, apologies. I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Hurley, Councillor Nefsi. Are there any other apologies?
Sorry, I'm eating a chocolate brownie. There's only a handful of council meetings a year, full council meetings, 4, 5, 6. Unless someone's dying in your house or something like that. Apologies for attending full council, for not attending full council meetings aren't really on. Councillor Maggie Hurley, as you've heard, hasn't turned up to the meeting. Councillor Lisa Navesey, as you've also heard, hasn't turned up to the meeting. So that's 2 of the independent councillors haven't even bothered to turn up to the last full council meeting of the year. It's poor. Thank you very much, Steve. Steve's an ex-army guy, and he doesn't know it yet, but he will feature in my analysis in a little while.
Okay. The minutes of the meeting of the council meeting held on 24th October and 6th November 2024 have been circulated with the agenda pack. Have been advised of an amendment to the minute 9 of the meeting held 6th November 2024. Insofar, the Councillor Ghaffur had asked a question about further costs, and the response from the leader did not accurately reflect in the minutes what was said. I understand that will be amended to reflect exactly what was said. Please can Sorry, Councillor Kapoor, do you want to?
Yeah, please, because I don't think it makes it quite clear on the email that I sent this morning. There was 4 questions that needed to be minuted, and it wasn't about additional costs, it was about extra costs that this council may face in the tune of £5 million. I think it's very important that we get that clear. Councillor Shah last meeting stated that there will be no undertaking of Muse's work in Oldham, but obviously because now it's public knowledge, I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but you know, we need to make sure that those are clearly minuted in these minutes.
So may I suggest that we use the video recording, and whatever the response has been given
with the full
is being
response
documented
in that.
Okay. So the Pakistani sectarian Kamiji, who clearly wants to take over from Arud Shah, so there's a cartel civil war taking place, and long may it continue, as far as I'm concerned, makes specific reference to how the minutes are wrong because Arud Shah said there was no undertaking with Muse. Yeah, that's what he said. There was no undertaking with Muse. And yet a £5 million figure has now been revealed. A £5 million undertaking has now been revealed, it seems. And he says we will get to it later in the meeting. You've heard it. The mayor's top referenced it as well. So we now all know what's coming. We now know what's coming, or what should have come. Which is why it was imperative for the Labour Party, aided by the Zig Heiler in their midst. Yes, Zig Heiler in their midst, to sabotage the meeting from proceeding. Let's carry on. You've missed it, haven't you? You acknowledge it, you've missed it. These little things, you've missed it. And it's fine. It's what I am here to do.
So can Council agree that minutes of the Council meeting held on 24th October, sorry, don't know who was first, Councillor Hamdani?
Thank you. I'd like to move an amendment to the minutes on page 50, which is in the report on Places for Everyone, to add, after the recommendations were therefore lost, add, and the Council agreed to write to the Secretary of State as moved in the original motion. The original motion was to write to the Secretary of State, and anything removing this option in its entirety would be a breach of the Constitution, item 14.6.1d, which is to negate the effect of an original motion. The vote was taken under the clear understanding that if the report fell, the Council would write to the Secretary of State. Prior to the meeting, the Liberal Democrat group attempted to submit amendments to the text to make this explicit. Both were refused, but it was confirmed by the Borough Solicitor that if the report fell, then the Council would write to the Secretary of State, and this should be reflected in the minutes. Thank you.
So it was confirmed by the interim Borough Solicitor that if the report failed, then it was confirmed that if the report failed, which it did, because we managed to win that vote, that the letter would go. That's Sam Hamdani saying that was what was confirmed in the actual meeting. And the minutes don't reflect that. And you go back and watch the videos, you'll see that that is what took place. So, a £5 million undertaking not being declared, or being said there's no undertaking when there is a £5 million undertaking with Muse, and Places for Everyone, the Borough Solicitor confirming, the interim Borough Solicitor confirming that if the report is lost, then the letter will have to be written. Yeah. It's not Raj Emir saying this, it's the actual councillors in the meeting.
Thank you.
Right, I think I need a constitutional expert on this. Borough Solicitor, would you like to respond to that? Did you say page 50?
So with regards to the minutes, it's the end of the minutes on the report on Places for Everyone, which I believe is page 50 of our document. The reference to the Constitution is 14.6.1d.
I'll take a few more questions while you're looking for the answer. Councillor Sykes?
Mine's on the same matter, Mr Mayor, so I'll second Councillor Al Dami's proposal. And I think it's important. Everybody who was in that debate, I think, was very clear what we were voting for. There were some very passionate speeches on that side of the chamber, urging us not to write, and some passionate speeches on this side, urging us to write. And then we had a vote. And then we suddenly decided we don't have to write. If that was the case, and it was very clear, and I suggest anybody watches the video back, what we all thought we were debating, I don't understand why somebody didn't give us some advice and say, well, actually, councillors, that's not what you're debating. But we didn't. There was silence. The original motion that I tabled, that Councillor Woodvine seconded, said we would write. The amendment to that, if I'm remembering correctly, removed it. So one could argue it negated part of it, but it was allowed, whereas I didn't think we allowed things that negated it. But anyway, we had the report, and if I remember right, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Mr Mayor, but at the rising of the leadership, your briefing, I did ask the legal officer and yourself, well, what happens then, having had confirmed in writing that there isn't anything we could try to do to make it clearer. He said, well, you'll just have to vote for it, the proposition will fall, and then we'll write. And that was part of the conversation we had in your chamber when there was just me, you, and the legal officer there at the end. You're looking at me as if...
So Howard Sykes confirms what took place and says the mayor was in the same room with him as well as the legal officer. So now it seems we're all liars, apart from Bogatoff, the interim borough solicitor, backdoor appointed, without interview. No external recruitment process for one of the most senior and significant positions in this borough. Backdoor Bogatoff. And yes, his claim to fame includes he once won a modelling contest where he beat Mr UK.
Your memory might be different than mine, I can assure you, Mr Mayor, and I wouldn't say it, and I'm not making it up. So I just think sometimes these things need to be not done behind closed doors, need to be done in open. That not once but twice we tried to amend that report, and that was ruled out of order. But the amendment that negated the writing, if indeed it did, was allowed. So there's a bit of inconsistency here, but I'm very clear what council thought it was doing at the last meeting, and it was a very close vote. Tempers were quite heated, but that's what we're doing, and we think the minutes should reflect that, Mr Mayor.
I got quite a few speakers. I got Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This motion, as far as I'm concerned, we discussed at our previous meeting. It was quite simply a motion which was accepted as correct, was debated and voted upon.
I'm pausing this because I want you to look at the vicar guy in the background. Look at his eyes, look at the scowl. This is another council stooge. Just have a look at how he's looking. Body language tells a lot. Just have a look at him.
The vote was won unamended. Quite simple, and now to have jiggery-pokery red tape speak is unacceptable. We may be said to be the most deprived town in the region. We are not the most stupid. Never forget its history. Oldham has long been a symbol of resilience, of standing up against injustice and fighting for fairness and democracy. From the town's role in resisting the American slave trade in the 19th century to the discomfort of many of our workers in the cotton mills, its pivotal participation in the suffragette movement, and not to mention all those of our area who walked to Peterloo in August 1819 in support of the right to vote, freedom and oppression from justice. Oldham has always been...
Councillor Byrne, I would love to hear your speech, but
I've only got that bit.
this is not related to minutes, please.
What I'm saying is, I think that what we did was right. We understood what was right. That was what that two repeat councillor Sykes, and I really do feel that the whole thing ought to be done again because we should have been notified at the time.
Let me get a few speakers and then we'll ask our solicitor to respond. It will be helpful if you just repeating what has already been said. Please keep it briefly because we do need to conduct the business of the council. Councillor Gafoor?
I'm going to say something very similar, and I'm going to try and take a brief. I had a very long speech prepared, but obviously I don't think everybody wants to hear it. But clarity...
Plenty of opportunities.
Well, yes, absolutely, no problem. Already. Clarity in the rules of the council votes is not just a procedural matter. It's a backbone of democracy. Without clear rules, we risk creating confusion, misunderstanding and mistrust, opening the door for political convenience to override the democratic will of the people. And the democratic will of this council at the last November the 6th meeting was that we actually write to the Secretary of State and get out of PFE. Now, I'm quite disgusted, so I'm going to go right to the end here now, so I've missed all the middle parts out for your convenience. But I'm disgusted. Well, but the council's convenience. But I'm quite disgusted by the decision not to act on the vote's outcome. And I urge all and every single one of us to reflect on what that means for this council. Does that mean if we vote for something and then we go back on it? We need to clarify the rules and what the rules are. We need clarity, transparency and integrity in our decision-making. Democracy demands no less. Thank you.
Councillor Harkness?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We all know what we were voting for. We all know what we were debating in that meeting. Now, the reason why the letter hasn't been written, well, we don't actually...
Sorry, we're just talking about the minutes, sorry. I can't
just
take the long speeches.
Yeah, well, it is on the minutes, 49 to 50. But but this is important because the reason why the action hasn't been taken is, well, we don't actually officially know that because no one bothered telling us. But from what we've heard in the press, it seems to be around a double negative, right? Well, we know that, so in maths, a double negative, a negative and negative makes a positive. In logic theory, a not reverts back to the original true statement. And double negative, so it's quite clear, if you have a double negative, that just gets rid of what happened and it reverts back to the original. So we know that. We know what we voted for. It was quite clear, right? So if that's not the case, then that suggests then, therefore, the original amendment which caused it to kick the can down the road originally sort of substantively changed the original motion, so that should not have been accepted. And if you're saying, well, that's actually, no, that was fine, then the amendments we wanted to put in at the time, again, should have been accepted. So all those ways down the line, we've tried our best to make it very clear in this, because, you know, if you're saying there was some ambiguity in that report, well, we tried making that very clear, and you said, oh, no, we don't need to put in any amendments, because it's very clear.
I think you made your point very valid. So
but this is about democracy now.
I'm going to ask Labour members to please...
The majority of councillors in this chamber voted a certain way, and the leadership are trying to stop that. They might not like the answer.
Would you please
they might not like what the council chamber decided,
Would you please
but
take
that's
a
what
seat,
was
please?
decided.
Okay. Can you keep it, please, brief, all of them? Councillor Taylor first, and then Councillor Shah.
Sorry, go on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I mean, some grand words, I have to say, but let us take us back to the actual meeting and have a little bit of clarity around this. So, what we actually voted upon was a report that had 4 substantive points. The first one was to reflect upon information provided in workshop sessions. The second, to note officer recommendations to not write to the Secretary of State to request revocation of the PFE, to retain places for everyone, and to continue to prepare an Oldham plan as the Part 2 plan for Oldham under the PFE. That is really very clear. The point that I would make is that actually on both sides of the chamber, we were aware what that meant. People have been aware for a number of weeks. So the option was for you to bring a motion forward if you believe that you still wanted to seek revocation.
That's not true.
Alternatively, you tried to bring forward 2 amendments, but the only amendment that you needed to bring was an amendment reverting us back to the original motion. This has become a procedural issue, but it's become a procedural issue because people clearly don't seem to understand the Constitution. It's not complicated.
You lost the vote.
It's not difficult.
You lost the vote.
I'm going to ask Boris
You
Lee
lost
for a
the
minute to
vote.
It's
explain
very clear,
Constitution,
Mr Mayor.
sorry.
You
And
lost the
actually,
vote.
there is an action that they can take if they want to seek revocation, and they just need to bring a motion forward. And this is just, again, playing games when they don't need to. Misinformation.
Councillor Shah,
Oh, misinformation all the time. Look at them clapping like seals.
please can I have silence, please.
So just briefly, to provide clarity, I think if you want to talk about examples of people not liking the result of something, then you just have to listen to the speeches that we've just had before Councillor Taylor's. It's not the administration's fault that people don't know what they're doing in this chamber. It's because they're so caught up in the pettiness of it all that they lose sight of the importance. So no involvement in this, personally for me whatsoever. But what I will do to clarify this is that explain to members of the opposition, because I'm quite magnanimous like that, it's all my goodwill. So the report before Council last month didn't actually mandate officers at all to write to the Deputy Prime Minister to request revocation of the PFE. So they didn't do that because that's not what was asked for. Rejecting the recommendations of that report isn't as simple, really, Mr Mayor, as approving mystery recommendations that councillors wanted it to be. So it's not my fault if opposition councillors didn't know what they were voting for. But if they want to request that, then all they need to do is bring another motion forward to council asking for that. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. Councillor Quick.
Now see how he treats Councillor Lewis Quick.
No, Mr Mayor, after that diatribe, I mean, only one can add to that. I'll refer to pages 49, 50 and 48, 49 and 50 on this. I have to say that I attempted in my point of order, if you remember, Mr Mayor, at the close of the meeting, in regards to the wording and the legality of the motion of the Acting Borough Solicitor to clarify whether this was correct. And the answer forthcoming was no comment. There was no comment made. So, given that, we had in the report titled a motion, it was titled a motion, not necessarily a recommendation, which would have been a list. The refusal to admit amendments to that is unconstitutional. You've had an original motion which was presented by Councillor Sykes, presented and seconded by Councillor Woodvine, which was then amended by Councillor Hince and Councillor Navesy, I think it was, top of my head. That then carried unanimously. It said it was to ask officers to produce a report, which it did, to inform a decision. Inform. It didn't say not to write. That was not what was clear. It was to inform a decision. So in informing a decision does not mean not to write. And then on the basis of that, that then report, as titled as a motion, amended the original amended motion, which therefore, Mr Bogatoff, it negates everything. You've made a word soup of it all. At the end of the day, this side of the chamber, we must be all wrong then, the public must be all wrong, that we knew what we were voting for. Now, the dictator at the front row can say what she wants, but the point, at the end of the day, this council voted, it was carried, and the words of former Councillor Fielding, which was, it isn't illegal to write a letter, but we'll just ignore it anyway, tells everything as to the Labour Party's thinking on this. Because they don't want to respect the democratic vote and the democratic will of this chamber. It's a disgrace.
Thank you, please. Councillor Hince, the last one, and then I will ask Boris Lister to explain, please.
Well, I'll keep it relevant. I think that's the main thing. Obviously, I brought the amendment to the motion which requested the report, and I do not regret that because I think all councillors needed to have the officers' viewpoints, including stakeholders. Now, I myself voted to reject that report, and I believed we would be bringing another motion to ask for PFE removal. Now, the thing...
So there is Councillor Mincey Boy, as we know him, Hyle Mince. he was the one who amended it first to kick it into the long grass. Because he's stuck in Shaw. Because if he votes to allow the building on the Greenbelt, which is what the Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham wants, he's finished. Him, Navesey and whoever, they're finished. So instead of supporting the vote to write to the minister to withdraw from Places for Everyone, he insisted on an amendment that would look at the recommendations of a report by council officers. Now they produced that report, and those of you who followed me will know how I produced the report of that report, ripping that report to pieces. I think it's about 50 pages. I produced the report, I stayed up day and night and I produced the report, analysing that, and I shared it with all the opposition leaders. And as a consequence of that, at the last council meeting, opposition councillor after opposition councillor stood up and basically took elements of what I'd written. It's no problem. It's what I'm here for. And used it to corner Marc Hince, and he was forced to vote with him. And he knew what he was voting for, but now he's claiming that the vote was just to reject the report and you'd need another vote to leave Places for Everyone. Yeah. And he goes on, I'll just play it in a second, he goes on to say, well, why, if you want another vote, why don't you just bring another motion? And he tries to hand it over to Councillor Howard Sykes. Of course, he admits that he was the one who attempted to sabotage the motion in the first place. And he could also, Mince, could also bring a motion and could have brought a motion forward. This is what controlled opposition looks like.
Getting a bit concerned with, and I think the members of the public will, this is becoming a charade. Let's get back to the key principle. Do we want to stay in PFE or do we want to come out? It's that simple. So I would ask members, rather than stop turning it into a
Please allow member to speak, please. Consecrate, please.
Where's yours?
No.
Can I speak?
So Councillor Howard Quigg, and the confrontation taking place there is, well, where's his motion? Lewis is making the point. Well, if you're that bothered, where's your motion? And he responded with, well, where's yours? Well, Lewis Quigg's motion, the Conservatives' motion, was blocked. And that's why Lewis is now getting angry. Because Lewis Quigg and the Conservatives had put forward a motion and the borough solicitor had blocked it. Completely unheard of. So this is the context of what leads to the escalation. The borough solicitor had blocked it because he deemed it not to be a good motion. It's not for the borough solicitor to decide what makes a good motion or what makes a bad motion. It's whether the motion is constitutionally compliant or not. And it was. So what you've now got is the borough solicitor on a second time unlawfully interfering. And remember, this borough solicitor has been reported to Greater Manchester Police for misconduct in public office, and Greater Manchester Police are still refusing to investigate. And it's not been reported by me, it's been reported by senior councillors. The borough solicitor in Oldham has been reported to Greater Manchester Police for misconduct in public office. And here he is continuing to block democratic processes. Now, listen, I might be getting animated here, but there's a reason why. Because if we don't have democracy, we have nothing. If we don't have democracy, we have people marching on the streets, burning down buildings, burning down mosques, attacking politicians, killing politicians. If we don't have democracy, that is where this goes. Council officers should not be blocking democracy. We elect politicians, we elect representatives to speak on our behalf. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but that's the process. And Bogotoff, the interim borough solicitor, remember, backdoor Bogotoff, And the chief executive there is also a backdoor appointment. There's no external recruitment. For a chief executive, there's no external recruitment. So all of that has took place so far that the national media have missed completely in the demonisation of Councillor Lewis Quigg.
Mr. Quigg,
Can I speak?
no, please stop. No, Councillor Hince.
We're 3 minutes in and already you're on.
Please speak to me. Councillor Quigg, please.
Sorry, just getting distracted by some... Okay, so it's about PFE. Do we want to be in, do we want to be out? Right, so weeks ago, before this council, before the motions were submitted, people were informed the nature of the motion, that it wasn't to write. So there was nothing stopping any of us. There was nothing stopping anyone pick the phone up. Unfortunately, we made the wrong assumption that Councillor Sykes, who has championed this issue from day one, would submit a motion. He's not contacted us, no communication. We made that error. Now, I ask Councillor Sykes and his coalition to simply just submit another motion, and we will support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's it. Please, can I have a silence? Please, can I have a silence, please? Please, can I have a silence, please? Please, can I have a silence, please? Please, can I have a silence? Can I have a silence, please? Please, can I have a silence? Let me conduct the business, please. So I'll ask Borough Solicitor to explain. I do not want any interruption while he's trying to explain things, please.
Hi, thanks for that. Yeah,
Here we go.
At no point have we been asked to write to the Secretary of State as of yet. We were asked to vote in relation to the 4 points which Councillor Taylor has outlined. And it clearly says, it's underlined and it's in bold, not to write to the Secretary of State and to retain the places for everyone. So that was what was voted upon. That was voted down. The next stage is to write a letter to the Secretary of State as and when we have a motion to decide that. So it's clear that the will of the people here is to vote at some point. So let's put it to bring a motion and then we'll vote on it. That's as simple as that.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Now the problem with that is a motion was submitted by Lewis Quigg and the Conservatives to vote on that. A motion was brought forward. And Bogotoff blocked the motion, and I have the email exchanges. He should be sacked. He should be suspended pending disciplinary action. In a functioning democracy, Bogotoff would now be suspended. And that's independent of the misconduct in public office. Don't believe me? Listen to the next bit. Listen to the next bit.
Thank you very much. I think it's very clear. Please do bring a motion, and if anyone is reluctant...
Mr Mayor, point of order on this, point of order. I have to say, that is an absolutely shocking decision from the acting Borough Solicitor, and I have to say, I made, in our motion, which was denied by the acting Borough Solicitor, a clarification on what should have been presented in that motion. The acting Borough Solicitor, and I have it in black and white.
So what Lewis wants to do is read out what the Borough Solicitor said. And you can see Arooj Shah getting agitated because she wants to stop this. Arooj Shah wants to stop this because she is getting agitated because of what it reveals. And this is where the meeting starts to get to where it led. You can see, it had nothing to do with the Nazi stuff. The council have been cornered. They've been cornered, and the Borough Solicitor has been exposed for complicit in the denial. He's complicit in the denial of democracy.
Motion is not intended to create a political circus. If you wish to raise a formal complaint on the matter of officer council regarding behaviours and ability, your ability to do that, a motion at full council is not a suitable forum to do that. This motion is not accepted on the basis that it's out of order, irregular and improper.
That's a continuation.
And it's simply being used to criticise myself and the Mayor and sensibly leave the council.
Can I
if you are
just
not
say,
satisfied with the advice
the decision
given
of the motion was never enough.
So you can see straight away Arooj Shah shouting, desperately shouting, trying to stop Lewis Quigg from reading out what the Borough Solicitor has said to him in blocking his motion. Do you see what's gone on? Do you see what's gone on? Arud Shah is shouting, screeching like a banshee.
Generally, can you sit down, Councillor Shah?
Can I ask both of
In the
members to
correct
please take
manner,
a
this
seat?
is not-
Please take a seat, both of members. Do you want to respond to that? And I'm going to close this on this.
Yeah. If it assists Councillor Quigg, your motion was simply rejected.
What time did you respond to me? What time did you respond?
Sorry, please, can
Mr.
I ask
Mayor, I'm
Councillor
not
Quigg?
gonna
Can I ask you
allow-
to please hold your now?
Mr.
Please,
Mayor,
can I ask
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Quigg, Councillor Quigg, just 1 second, please, Councillor Shah. Do not speak to the officers like this. That's no,
Councillor Lewis Quigg is being criticised for being passionate. And if he's angry, he's simply reflecting the feelings of the majority of councillors in that chamber and the majority of public in the public gallery and beyond. We voted on something and they've blocked it, and the person who's blocked it is this borough solicitor, and then he's also then blocked a motion. And what Councillor Quigg is saying, what time did you respond to me to say my motion was going to be blocked? And the reality of why Bogotoff is being evasive with the time is because he waited until 5 minutes before the deadline to respond, thereby which Lewis would not have the time to make any alterations. Not that there was anything wrong with the motion in the first place, but the reason Bogotoff left it till 5 minutes beforehand was to prevent any chance, any opportunity for the motion to be altered and submitted for a council meeting.
Quigg, I'm asking you to not speak to the officers like this. They have not got the right to speak to you like this. Please do not speak to them like this. I'm asking you respect. We're having a democratic debate here. We're having a democratic debate, and on every occasion when you raise the question, I seek clarification on your behalf. I supported you, but I would not allow you to have this anger outburst on officers at here. They are not allowed to speak. Take it among yourself, administration and opposition. Don't throw them under the bus. If you have a problem with officer, take it to the chief executive.
The chief executive is a bent backdoor appointment, Arud Shah's drinking buddy, Shelley Kipling. And throwing officers under the bus, well, actually holding officers to account is fully acceptable in a council meeting. Holding officers to account, particularly an officer such as the interim borough solicitor that has blocked democracy twice now, one in refusing to write, blocking the letter to write, and two in blocking a motion. That's that baldy sat next to Dr. Chauhan, the former model. Once beat Mr. UK, remember?
Hey, let me finish, please. You are not allowing me to finish, Councillor Quigg. If chief executive does not respond, bring it here. No, please, let me finish, please. Honestly, I'm losing my temper and patience as well, Councillor Quigg. If you have an issue with the officer, take it to the right channels. If officers don't respond, of course, bring it here. There's no issue at all. But I think it will be unfair to put people on the spot who can't respond. Do you want to respond to any of these questions?
Yes, Chair. In relation to the time frame, you had a response within an hour.
No, you responded. Sorry, can I ask?
You sent the motion at 10:48 a.m. in the morning. You had a response.
You had an hour to respond. Just fighting. It's just fighting. Exactly.
If it assists Councillor Quigg, I did explain in the email the motion was just simply a really poor motion.
That's your opinion.
The motion was simply a poor motion. How dare he? That's his opinion. Councillor Lewis Quigg is right. That is his opinion. How dare backdoor Bent Bogotoff, who tried to take an injunction against me, by the way. He tried to take an injunction against me to protect Jim McMahon whilst I was campaigning in the general election. Using public money, Bent backdoor Bogotoff tried to take an injunction out against me. Using your money on behalf of the council, had his heavyweight solicitors write to me. Not one single solicitor would put their name to their threats, by the way, until we exposed backdoor Bogotoff was behind all of it. He was interim deputy solicitor then. Interim deputy borough solicitor at the time. He's just said, your motion was a poor motion, and Lewis is right to be angry. That's your opinion. Your opinion counts for bugger all, Bogotoff. You are there to enact the Constitution. And those of us who followed this work for the last 6 years, we've seen badly worded motion after badly worded motion, and I can demonstrate a motion in this very meeting, if it had got that far, that was badly worded. There's a motion, for crying out loud, on sanctions against Israel. Like this council has any authority over sanctions against Israel. And that was allowed. So you can see it's escalated and he's cornered. He's been cornered. He's been caught. Bogatov has been caught and Lewis has caught him. And have a look. I mean, people say, oh, Bogatov's not bothered. He's done all right, or, he looks calm. Have a close look at his face here. Just have a close look at his eyes. Look at that scowl. If you're trained, you're trained to look out. People I know, we're trained to look for these things. Just look at that expression on his face. Look at Bogatov's expression. Do you see it? Because he knows he's been caught, red-handed, interfering with democracy. This is beyond the remit of a council officer.
So are we approving? Please take a seat, please. Okay, that's fine. Up. Okay, so. Okay, please, can I, Councillor Craig, please.
They turned the mic off. Can I get an apology for that? You can see.
Heard what he said.
Heard what? Who said?
Do you want to continue with this business of the council, or do we need to cancel this council meeting?
You see, straight away. Do you want to continue with the meeting or do you want to cancel? So they had orchestrated this. They had orchestrated this. You can see Mincy taking a drink now, taking a swig. Is that water or is that vodka in that bottle? I'm not sure, but he's taking a good swig. And you can see, you've seen it all yourself. Lewis's focus was with who? Who was Lewis's focus with? Lewis's focus was clearly directed at the borough solicitor. And he'd cornered the borough solicitor. And Kipling and Marc Hince think they've heard Lewis say something. Lewis hadn't said anything, by the way. I've checked with him. And watch. Watch who the aggressor is.
No, it's honestly nothing to do with I cannot, guys, carry on.
You all saw that. You all saw that. Who was out of order? Who was causing alarm and distress? If the police needed to be called in for anyone in that 20 seconds, who would it be? Who would it be?
Can you please stay quiet?
And now he points at a member of the public and abuses a member of the public. You all saw that? He then points, Mincy boy, then points at a member of the public and abuses a member of the public. I'll just go backwards so you can see it.
No, Councillor Craig, I'm asking you to not speak to the officers like this. They have not got the right to speak to you like this. Please do not speak to them like this. I'm asking you respect. We're having a democratic debate here. We're having a democratic debate, and on every occasion when you raise the question, I seek clarification on your behalf. I supported you, but I would not allow you to have this anger outburst on officers at here. They are not allowed to speak. Take it among yourself, administration and opposition. Don't throw them under the bus. If you have a problem with officer, take it to the chief executive. Sorry, let me finish, please. You are not allowing me to finish, Councillor Craig. If chief executive does not respond, bring it here. No, please, let me finish, please. Honestly, I'm losing my temper and patience as well, Councillor Craig.
If you have an issue with officer, take it to the right channels. If officers don't respond, of course bring it here. There's no issue at all. But I think it will be unfair to put people on the spot who can't respond. Do you want to respond to any of these questions?
Yes, Chair. In relation to the time frame, you had a response within an hour.
No, you responded. Sorry, can I ask?
You sent the motion at 10:48 a.m. in the morning. You had a response. If it assists Councillor Quigg, I did explain in the email the motion was just simply a really poor motion.
That's your opinion.
Okay, so are we approving? Please take a seat, please. Okay, that's fine. Up. Okay, so. Okay, please, can I, Councillor Quigg, please.
You're an example, you cross-dress as a Nazi. Might be what Lewis had said. I can't make it out. But that's, and you can hear Shelley Kipling going, oh no. Well, Shelley Kipling, on what basis are you going, oh no? Shelley Kipling, backdoor dodgy appointment in the communications team of Oldham Council that was responsible, exposed under Cllr Marc Hince for covering up the grooming and gang rape of children. You're in that team, weren't you, Shelley Kipling? I wonder if that's how you got elevated to chief executive. If your actions at that time have somehow led to you being drinking mates with Arood Shah now. And you can see her saying, oh no. Oh no. And Mark was indeed absent from his seat. So he came back into the room, clearly off camera, and said something or did something to provoke is what took place, Carrie. The general public are not stupid.
We all heard what he said.
Do you want to continue with this business of the council, or do we need to cancel this council meeting? No, it's honestly nothing to do with it. I cannot, guys, carry on.
So, all this time, Dr. Chowan is telling Lewis off or telling the others off, and a clear act of aggression by a councillor, and Dr. Chowan has nothing to say to him. Clear act of aggression. Because if Mincy Boy had said that to me and shouted at me that way, well, he wouldn't be standing up. I think Councillor Max Woodvine, who I believed is the one who shouted and screamed at, did extremely well to hold his nerve and stay calm. And if anything, Councillor Max Woodvine should be applauded for his reserve under extreme pressure and provocation by a man with clear anger management issues. Indeed, Julie. Hince is disgusting. He has no clue about protocol. And what you now see when Hince sits down, and I want you to see it, is he starts abusing a member of the public. That's the public gallery to the left. He starts abusing a member of the public. Watch it.
Can you please stay quiet? Right, guys, I will have to adjourn the meeting, please.
And that gave him the excuse to adjourn the meeting. That gave him the excuse to adjourn the meeting. It was the plan all along. It was the plan all along. Do you see? For those of you new to me, my name is Raja Mia. I've been doing this for 6 years. The police have repeatedly arrested me, falsely, maliciously, at the instructions of Oldham Council and senior Labour Party councillors, politicians, including the MP, 2 MPs. One of them has been exposed for fabricating evidence against me. All of that collapsed in a police station. Ruth Shah and her mate, Dale Cregan's, was it Dale Cregan? No, what's he called? Some Salford gangster's wife conspired against me. 3 years later, went to court and the case collapsed there as well. The reason they want to silence me is because this is what I do. And as well as doing this, I directly campaign, educate and mobilise communities to remove Labour Party politicians from power. And I'm very good at it. So it's... Hold on, I just want to carry on playing this because you can hear the exchange a bit longer whilst the camera goes off.
You've got something to say, Councillor Hince. Come and say it.
He needs removing. Yeah.
If you've got something to say, Councillor Hince, come and say it. Is my friend Steve. Steve is a war veteran. Steve objects, quite rightly, as a war veteran. Steve objects to councillors cross-dressing as Nazis. Steve objects to councillors zig-heiling in council meetings. What do we have to do? Do we have to go to the next council meeting with Nazis, no Nazis welcome here, posters, and hand them out, and stand in the public gallery strategically placed behind councillors so the cameras see us with banners? Is that what we have to do, Dr. Chauhan? Nazis not welcome here? Is that what we've, this town, we've had to say we oppose the grooming and gang rape of children. That we're campaigning against the grooming and gang rape of children in itself is disgraceful. It should be the position all of us hold. The grooming and gang rape of children is not acceptable and never will be acceptable, no matter how many samosas you get or how many votes the people who are responsible can give you access to. Do we now have to turn up to council meetings to say we object to Nazis? In the United Kingdom? The meeting was adjourned for some time. And I thought it had been cancelled. And what had been taking place in the background was the demand for apologies from Max Woodvine to Councillor Hince and from Lewis Quigg to the Borough Solicitor. The meeting was then reconvened. Here we go.
I hope you had a reasonable break. We just met all the group leaders inside, and I'm just going to summarize what is being asked. So, based on what happened before we adjourned the meeting, I'm requesting, and stay with me, let me please complete it. I'm requesting Councillor Quigg to apologize, Councillor Woodvine to apologize, and Councillor Hince to apologize for the behavior. So Councillor Woodvine and Councillor Quigg to apologize to, Councillor Quigg to apologize to Borough Solicitor, Councillor Woodvine to apologize to Councillor Hince, and Councillor Hince to apologize to all of us for his outburst.
I'd like to formally apologise.
The mic, he turns his mic off on purpose. So after saying he'd like to formally apologise and what the rest of it you can't pick up, he's turned his mic off on purpose. So you can't hear it and the public can't hear it.
Thank you.
Councillor Quick, Councillor Woodburn, sir, would you like to apologise? No. Honestly, Councillor Quick, it can be much easier than that. Why you can't get in? Well, would members please give a wave? Come on, Councillor Quick. Come on, Councillor Quick.
He's trying to get to his seat. And he was blocked from getting to his
Councillor
seat.
Woodburn apologise? No. Councillor Quick, would you like to apologise?
Can you repeat that, Mr. Mayor? Sorry.
Would you like to apologise?
For
your behaviour towards the Borough Solicitor?
Yeah, sure. I'll apologise to Mr. Entwistle.
Thank you. Mr. Entwistle, sorry. Mr. Bogatev, did you mean, sorry?
Well, what position is Mr. Bogatev? I thought I was...
He's right, because Dr. Chauhan, and you can see R comes from Kipling. Kipling should not say a single word unless she's told to. The R should not come from Kipling. Now, I know Lewis is taking the mick, but he's right on this point, because Dr. Chauhan should not refer to Alexander Bogatov as the borough solicitor. Is the interim borough solicitor. It's a massive difference. It's a massive difference.
You don't want to apologise? No, Councillor Quick, please.
So you're asking me to apologise to Mr. Bogatev, the acting borough solicitor, for
your behaviours toward him.
Specifically,
which everyone agrees. Sorry, I'm not going to go into all that again. Sorry.
You
know what we asked for, so you can say yes or no.
So
I'm just requesting you.
No, I'm asking politely.
For your aggressive behaviour.
Is aggressive behaviour?
Yeah. Okay, so being passionate is now considered aggressive.
Well, I'm really sorry. I can't get into that debate now.
Okay. It's the first time the mayor used the term aggressive behaviour, and he used it towards Councillor Lewis Quigg. He's asking Councillor Lewis Quigg to apologise for his aggressive behaviour, but he did not use the word aggressive on what Cllr Marc Hince did. Now, you've all seen this the same as me. Where was the aggression? Was it from Lewis Quigg, who was questioning and challenging the borough solicitor in line with the council procedures? He was pressing his microphone, he was speaking when he was supposed to. Or was it from Marc Hince, who stood up and shouted and screamed in a manner that would have caused most people alarm and distress? Who was aggressive? And why did Dr. Chauhan not use the word aggressive to describe the behaviour of Cllr Marc Hince?
I'm not debating, I'm just asking a question.
I'm mindful that I have a personal relationship with you as well, which I don't want to spoil, but I do got to do a job as well. So
will Mr. Bogatov apologise for his behaviour in relation to that, or should we just take this to a standards committee meeting?
Of course you can follow any procedure, but I think...
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. So what Lewis has just done, he said, okay, he essentially said, I'm not going to apologise, but he's reminded the mayor of what the process is for a complaint against him. And the process for a complaint against him is the standards committee. So if any councillor there, if the mayor has an issue, if Bogatov has an issue, if Shelley Kipling has an issue with Lewis Quigg's behaviour, the council's own constitution has a remedy for that, and it's called the standards committee. It is not to cancel the meeting. It is not to cancel the meeting. And Lewis Quigg has subtly reminded the mayor of the council's own procedure. And then he mocks them later because he asks the question, where in the constitution is what you are now trying to do? Listen, watch it, play out.
The question is, do you want to or not?
I'll apologise once the standards committee meeting's been initiated, which is what
I'll
per the
take it that as
constitution.
take it that as a no, sorry.
I didn't say yes or no, though. That's a difference. There's a point of law here. Mr Bogotsov, more than happy to. If you want to clarify that, I'm asking that this goes to a standards committee meeting.
Mayor has not been respected.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just request that we move, if we are not going to respect your position as mayor and the chair of this meeting, if we're not going to respect our officers who work hard day and night, who had no absolutely other business apart from stating the Constitution and what the legal Constitution is, and if we're going to allow abuse in this chamber, then I'm going to request, and on the basis that 2 members who have behaved really badly are refusing to apologise, I'm going to request that we adjourn this meeting. We can't...
See, she wants to adjourn the meeting. She wants to cancel the meeting. For those of you new to me, this is Arud Shah, the gangster-affiliated Pakistani heroin dealer, convicted heroin dealer, endorsed leader of Oldham Council, whose car was blown up in extremely suspicious circumstances in an attempt to frame me, and leaked video confirms that that car was left unlocked, and the police to this day will not arrest her nor confirm what actually took place, but they're happy to try and have me arrested and convicted until the video footage came out. Arud Shah, who had me falsely and maliciously arrested and then failed to turn up to court where her evidence would be tested, her lies would be tested. She claims she suffered from PTSD as a consequence of me challenging this council's cover-up of the grooming of gang rape of children, and what she used as her evidence is the side effects of Botox. Her face is apparently drooped on one side, and that is a well-known side effect of Botox rather than PTSD. She was also chased down the street by an old man, claimed I had something to do with it. The old man who chased her down the street, I have no idea who he was, but in her statement she had to put down a date of when she was chased down, a date and time, and that date and time was during COVID, when there was campaigning restrictions, and she should not have been knocking on people's doors, lobbying or canvassing for votes. So the likelihood is the old man chased her down the street for that rather than anything to do with me. And of course, the corrupt, complicit, politically infiltrated Greater Manchester Police arrested me instead. And then the case collapsed in court. You can see this excuse of a civic leader is attempting to shut down democracy in this meeting. Lewis Quigg has not refused to apologise. He has said, take it to a standards committee. And if a standards committee finds I've done something wrong, then I will apologise. That is the constitutional procedure.
This behaviour.
I'm not taking your request for a minute because we had a discussion in the group leaders meeting which was different than what you are saying. So would you group leaders would like to say anything on this issue before I take your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did talk about several incidents that have happened in this chamber. Personal attacks, aggressive behaviour is not acceptable to all members in this chamber, and certainly not to the people of Oldham. So I, as the group leader of the Conservative group, it is two of my members have, in my opinion, overstepped the mark tonight, and I would move a motion that they apologise for their behaviour earlier on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, point of order under the Constitution. Which part are you referring to?
Sorry, well...
No. So specifically, which part of the Constitution are you referring to in this debate? Councillor Sheldon, who's no longer a Conservative Party member, by the way, hasn't referred to any part of the Constitution.
Okay, this is important. There's two bits to that. Well, I'll get to the he's no longer a Conservative Party member, by the way, in a moment. For the last half an hour, the council has been arguing against us, saying the Constitution has not been followed, which is why the letter can't go to the Secretary of State for places for everyone. Yeah. So Councillor Howard Sykes has stood up and wants a motion, a vote saying these two need to apologise. The Constitution does not allow for a motion of that kind. You've got to, you know, there's a rule book. There's a council rule book, and you've got to play by the council rule book in these meetings. The rule book exists for a reason. It applies to everyone. And Lewis Quigg is clearly saying, well, where in the rule book does it allow for that? And of course it doesn't. The mayor has no idea. He's like, huh? Bogatov clearly knows. And Kipling, if you look at her face, is getting angrier and angrier. And as for his suspended, it's because Lewis is the chairman and he has the power to suspend people in the Conservative Party. But we'll come to that later. Ignore that bit for now. The relevant bit is actually that Howard Sykes, and you're right, Gary, is another yellow-bellied coward throwing his own team under the bus. Where is Graham Sheldon's statement demanding that the National Crime Agency are called into Oldham as a consequence of what was revealed in the council meeting behind closed doors last week? Nowhere.
Any other group members wish to speak?
So now Brian Hoban and all the others, you know, attack Lewis. You know why they're attacking Lewis. Arud Shah, Brian Hoban, etc.
I just want to support Councillor Graham Sheldon. I think what he's done today is admirable, and actually it respects the chamber. There's names around us all across this chamber for people who served this chamber and the people of this borough for years before us. And I think shame on all of us in this chamber who have allowed this behaviour to continue and grow, and shame on all of us who stand here and proclaim to represent the people of this borough and in their best interest when we behave in a conduct like this to people that we employ. It's absolutely absurd. I have huge empathy and huge respect for Councillor Graham Sheldon's moving of his request tonight.
Councillor Hoban, did you indicate?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Shah.
Convicted fraudster.
Sheldon's been very respectful in the chambers when we went out to speak, and I think he's doing a very good job of trying to get his members to behave. I do think it's such a shame, after such an inspiring speech that we had, that a couple of members in this chamber have resorted to this tonight, and I think it's time that we made a precedent and did something about it, and I fully support Councillor Sheldon.
Hoban, time we made a precedent and did something about it. What precedent would you want, convicted fraudster? Indeed. What they want to see is Lewis Quigg expelled. And as a warning, sends a warning to anyone else who steps out of line and dares challenge the illegality of what is taking place in this council chamber.
Councillor Kapoor?
Sorry, yeah, I'd like to second that and support Councillor Sheldon's motion.
See, Councillor Gaffar, who was suspended from the Conservatives. Remember, he was an ex-Labour Party councillor and an ex-Conservative councillor before he became the Pakistani sectarian lead of the Oldham group. Repeated motion after motion, victims of racism, Gaza, Palestine, Israel war crimes, bugger all to do with Oldham. The motion scheduled today, at this meeting, was also to do with Gaza, something to do with bloody sanctions. As if Oldham Council has the power for sanctions.
Sykes?
Sorry, Mr.
Sykes.
I'm just a little confused. I thought
Does well.
Councillor Sheldon was going to move that if they wouldn't apologise, they'd be asked to leave the chamber and then we'll get on with the business. I thought that's what we agreed, hence why I was looking a bit puzzled when you invited me to speak earlier, and that is what we agreed.
So they agreed something differently.
come in.
No, I don't want to remove any member from the chamber. Sorry, it's a democratic right for the members. However, I suppose what we're saying here, are we asking these two members to apologize? That's basically what's being asked. If they already said no, not apologizing, so in that case, you can move the motion.
In that case, if they are going to continue to be disrespectful to this chamber, to you as chair of this meeting, and to our officers, then I move to adjourn this meeting. I don't think we should go ahead and condone their behaviour, or at least embolden it. It's shameful.
Gangsters Mall. Gangsters Mall. Talking about what's shameful.
I've come on. I don't mind being criticised as being a councillor, and I've had my fair share of abuse both within the chamber and outside. But I will not be called a Nazi by anyone. I find that deeply offensive. To parry me with a group of people who were responsible for the murder of 9 million people is totally disrespectful. And unless I get an apology for that from the councillor behind me, who said it twice, it's now a police matter, I might add, I will be walking out of the chamber and I will be speaking to the press. Thank you.
Anyone wants to second the agenda of the council? Just second it. All those in the favour of adjourning the meeting? Okay. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
So you can see what they've done there. Sorry, I can take those headphones off now. You can see what they've done there, which was sabotage the meeting. It's what Arud Shah wanted all along. It's what the Labour Party councillors wanted all along. It's definitely what Bogatov, I think, wanted. You can see what's gone on. And Mincy Boy won't be called a Nazi. And it's now a police matter. Well, I can now confirm, as a direct consequence of some of the lobbying we've done and the awareness raising we've done on social media to counter the official narrative from the Oldham Times, or the Oldham Chronicle, the MEN, what she called the local democracy reporter, Charlotte Hall, and they've escalated and escalated it, made it out as though Lewis was something he wasn't. And the allegations of Nazi cross-dresser was inaccurate, a criminal matter. If it was a police matter, I can now confirm Greater Manchester Police have been forced to confirm that there is no action whatsoever to be taken against Councillor Lewis Quigg or Councillor Max Woodbine. Greater Manchester Police have been forced to confirm no further action, particularly because, despite Mincy Boys' claim, I'll get some in a second. Here we go. Councillor sparks fury after saying phrase associated with Nazis, Sieg Heil, during meeting, and claims he's a victim of a hate campaign because he claims he said it was a joke. Well, I'm sorry, he's dressed as a Nazi and he's Sieg Heiled in a meeting. And then Councillor Quigg does go to the media. And hopefully that page will reload. Exclusive revealed the reason why Oldham councillor was called a Nazi in debate chaos that riot police were called to. A furious Nazi row that erupted between councillors was sparked after one of the men used the phrase Sieg Heil at a previous meeting and was also pictured in a German uniform. Riot police were called to Oldham council offices this week after a heated debate about the Green Belt ended with elected officials allegedly squaring up to each other. That, by the way, is also a fabrication from Charlotte Hall. The meeting boiled over and Lewis Quigg, deputy leader of Oldham Conservatives, was heard calling the Labour Council leader a dictator. Well, you can see the dictator bit was much earlier in the meeting. He was then heard shouting over independent Marc Hince as he addressed the meeting. Video footage then showed Hince turning around to somebody, Max Woodvine, behind him and shouting, "Take that back now," before later telling councillors, "I will not be called a Nazi." The argument prompted a 90-minute pause in proceedings when police were called. It was reported later that Councillor Graham Sheldon, the Oldham Conservative leader, and Councillor Quigg argued and squared up to each other during the break. It was reported by, I think, Charlotte Hall. That report is inaccurate, just as it was inaccurate, her report, that the riot vans were called, because the riot vans were there at the beginning of the meeting because of a pro-Palestinian protest. The source of the row stemmed when Cllr Marc Hince had to previously apologise for wearing a Nazi uniform, not a German World War II uniform, a Nazi uniform with 3 SWAT stickers and an iron cross on it. 3 SWAT stickers. Speaking to Mail Online today, Councillor Hince said that, "To the best of my knowledge," you can see there in black and white, "to the best of my knowledge, it was the only time he had worn a Nazi uniform or memorabilia." To the best of his knowledge. Although he also said the Nazi phrase "Sieg Heil" during a Paris Council meeting in May this year, Councillor Hince said this was in response to another councillor who he claimed was making Nazi salutes in his direction. He's claiming Louis Hamlet made Nazi salutes. You can clearly hear me say "Sieg Heil." Is that what you mean, Louis? As I challenged him. Louis Hamlet is openly gay. He's an ambassador for LGBT rights in this town. Has been for a long time. The Nazis didn't just go after the Jews. They went after the gypsies and they went after gay men in particular. Louis Hamlet did not do a Nazi salute to us, Minty Boy. He's making it up. He told Mail Online, "I am not a Nazi and therefore do not subscribe in any associated beliefs or doctrines." 3 SWAT stickers and an iron cross. It is clear all this is just an attempt to misrepresentation by politically motivated mischief makers. Addressing his Sieg Heil comments, he said, "I am actually challenging a fellow councillor, Louis Hamlet, who appears to be making Nazi salutes in my direction and voting." Nonsense. It is part of the ongoing smear campaign against me. You can clearly hear me say, "Sieg Heil." Is that what you mean, Louis? As I challenged him. No, he didn't challenge him. He Sieg Heiled in the meeting because he voted. The word Sieg Heil was said during a vote. All this stemmed from after the local elections in May when the council fell into no overall control and we would not support Lib Dem Conservative coalition. No. It stemmed after the local elections when you went on record prior to the elections confirming under no circumstances would you prop up Arud Shah's administration, and then you went and propped up Arud Shah's administration. He added, "When I said Sieg Heil, I wasn't making a statement, I was asking a question to a fellow councillor." Now, speaking about the time he wore a Nazi uniform, he said, "This was over 12 years ago. The party I attended was in fact a well-publicised World War II event called Yanks Weekend in Saddleworth, where unsurprisingly there were countless others dressed in both Allied and Axis uniforms." I have not seen the SWAT stickers in Upper Mill at that thing, but if you have, that's by the by, okay? Let's go with his argument that it was 12 years ago and that's the only time he wore it. Unfortunately, World War II German decorations and uniforms carried the SWAT sticker. They don't. They're just not all German uniforms carried the SWAT sticker. This was many years ago before I stood for public office. So this was many years ago before he stood for public office and in no way reflects my personal or political views. The uniform was lent to me by a friend who attended many World War II events. What about the medals? The heated row broke out during a debate about a controversial... You've all heard of all of that. I could never have envisaged or prepared for the level of personal abuse I have received. Well, you've all been online and you've seen him and the personal abuse he's dished out. In particular characterising me as a Nazi on the basis I attended a well-known local World War II event dressed as a German soldier over 12 years ago. This abuse has affected not just my professional career, so that seems to suggest that he's been sacked, but also my personal life, with both myself and my wife being abused in public and online. This has also had a significant impact on my health. I think there's other things I personally think that might have had an impact on your health, Councillor Hince. Due to the stress this has caused me in a public family. As a public figure, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on to the places for everyone. So you can see, Councillor Hince on record saying, best of my knowledge, only wore it once, borrowed the uniform off my mate 12 years ago before I stood for public office. Yeah. You can see that. That's not me. Well, here we have Mincy Boy, far more recently than 12 years ago. Let me get the sound on for you.
Colonel in the British Army.
See the SWAT sticker there? See the uniform there? This is the night before an election. So he's sending out messages to his friends and supporters the night before an election. A video message wearing a Nazi uniform. And I will say Nazi uniform because there's a SWAT sticker. And I am a student of history, and a military uniform with a SWAT sticker on it is a Nazi uniform. Is this a public event? This man should now be immediately suspended as a councillor. Immediately suspended. That's what should happen now. Immediate suspension. Because he's now engaged in politics wearing a Nazi uniform. This is the night before an election where he stood as a candidate and he's sending video messages out in a Nazi uniform. This is not 12 years ago out of some World War II dress reenactment. And from what I can make out, this is him in his house. Why would you put on a Nazi uniform in your house and send out a video? Explain this to me, please. This is who the Labour Party are in alliance with, in coalition with, to try and keep hold of power in Oldham. If this is not a Nazi, then what is a Nazi? Why is a man, a candidate in an election, wearing a Nazi in the uniform and sending out videos? None of this is reported in the mainstream media, GB News, all of them glossed over. It's why I refuse to just pass on information. Interview me, look me in the eye, look who I am now. There's no teleprompter, there's nothing, I'm just talking to you. I understand the truth and I am able to communicate. And this is why these people fear me, and this is why Marc Hince maliciously fabricated an allegation of electoral fraud against me and published it online using the Oldham Council letter-headed paper, and I can also confirm that that allegation has now been dismissed because it was fabricated. It was made up. Councillor Marc Hince, the night before an election, dresses up in a Nazi uniform and sends out video messages.
Hi Gary, obviously you can't take orders from a colonel in the Wehrmacht, but I'm showing you this. So you'll take orders from a colonel in the British Army. Relax now, it's job done. Let's see what happens tomorrow.
Makes a liar out of him, doesn't it? I wore a uniform 12 years ago. I borrowed it from a friend. I suspect the uniforms in his wardrobe, in his house, along with the medals, the iron crosses and the SWAT stickers. No, he's not a prat. He's dangerous. This is dangerous. We defeated the Nazis in the Second World War, and it was important that we did. And this nation, our history, our heritage, our identity, our DNA is shaped by our refusal to surrender to tyranny. And an elected official in a council chamber behaving this way, wearing a uniform like this, the night before an election, he should resign with immediate effect. Arud Shah, the council should suspend him with immediate effect. And this is not 12 years ago. So he's gone to the national media and lied or misled. Unless you're to believe he does not recall this. So that's what took place at the council meeting. It was sabotage from the start, and it was sabotage because the council wanted to avoid a discussion and debate around the meeting that had taken place earlier in that week, which exposed serious concerns. And I've seen the paperwork because a whistleblower has brought the paperwork to me. And my analysis of that paperwork leads me to no other place other than the National Crime Agency need to come into Oldham. They have the power to investigate in a way Greater Manchester Police would not. Andy Burnham would not be able to influence the National Crime Agency. Arud Shah would not be able to influence them. Jim McMahon would not be able to influence them. The National Crime Agency need to be called in. And for the National Crime Agency to be called in, the opposition councillors have got to issue statements. Otherwise, we end up in a place where, sadly, far too many of us have ended up in. What's the point of voting? What's the point of taking part? Because they're all the same. They're all bent, they're all corrupt. We have to believe that those we voted for to stand against Arud Shah, to stand against the Labour Party tyranny in this town, the corruption, the cover-up of the gang rape of our children, the association with the cartels, the criminality, all those who campaigned on that platform, all we are asking them to do is issue a statement. You were in that meeting or you've got the paperwork. You know what happened then, and you also know why this council meeting was sabotaged and shut down. We've come to the end of the year. There's 433 of you who spent this evening watching me, listening to my analysis. The truth is, I will never work again because of what I've done, which was refuse to look the other way to the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children in my hometown. They've tried to put me in prison. They've had me followed home. They've openly endorsed my murder. The work I do is only possible with your support. And it's coming to a place where it's increasingly looking as though the work I do will sadly end. Unfortunately, despite 442 of you having spent the best part of, 2 hours? 4 of you have supported me with buying a coffee. To those 4 of you and the 2 or 3 of you that have bought some super chats, thank you so much. And to those who continue to support me with a 75p a week subscription, I will be eternally grateful. I'd like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good evening.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.